Good morning, everyone. It is Saturday, May the 2nd, 2020. It is currently 11:30 a.m. Central Time. And here I am. Yes, I'm here at Victory Baptist Church, sitting in the sanctuary again. And I know I don't think we've come to an agreement yet. Do I say behind the microphone or do I say in front of the microphone? Which is it? I don't know. Most say behind the microphone, but I'm speaking into this microphone once again, and I appreciate if you're listening to us live. Hey, thank you so very much. The live numbers continue to increase. I'm happy to see that the live numbers continue to increase. The total, let's see, do I have the numbers here? How many total? Let me look here. Give me 1 second. Over just a short period of time, give me 1 second. Let me go pull up the statistics, just so you have an idea. Yes, just over a short period of time, we've had 453 live listens. So thank you very much. 453 people have tuned in live. So that is awesome. I'd like that number to be far greater. Download numbers are looking really good. SoundCloud numbers are awesome. They're doing really good. We've had an interesting, there was a time there that our YouTube numbers were going up. The YouTube numbers were going up, and then boom, they've kind of dropped way off. Don't know why, but then if you look, Spotify numbers are way up. Now all of a sudden Spotify is way up. At one point it was iHeartRadio that was all. I guess that's one of the good and the bad, right? The good is when you put your podcast everywhere, then people can listen in wherever they want to listen. I mean, they have all the options in the world, but it's really hard to track. It's hard to track the trends of where things are. You have to go look here and you have to go look there. And look at all the numbers here. Well, wait a minute. All the numbers are down here, but the numbers are up here. It's not just one place where you can kind of track. Okay. You can kind of track what's going. Numbers are spread all over the place, so you have to kind of go put it all together to get an idea. And you don't know why numbers are up in one place and down in another. But hey, wherever you may be listening, however you may be listening, I'm appreciative. Thank you so very much. I am grateful for that. So just whatever you can do, share the podcast with anyone, everyone, friends, family, enemies, strangers. You can leave a rating and write a small review for Apple Podcasts. That definitely helps us get noticed. So appreciate those who've done that. And anything else you can think of, we will. Hey, I'm all for it. Just make it happen. All right. All right. Well, we have to return to a subject. I'm hesitating. I'm hesitating because this has already generated enough controversy. It's going to generate even more controversy because we are talking about, how Christians should relate, how Christians should interact, how Christians should respond to culture, right? How should we do this? And we're looking at a number of different views. We've looked at 2 views so far. We're probably only going to get to one more in this one. And there's so many things I would like to say about this. I also added kind of a separate episode, if you missed it, dealing with Christians and Netflix. That one, I need to return to that subject because I need to pull the audio. I need to pull the audio from the radio program that I heard that sparked that episode of the Theology Central podcast. I should have probably done that today. I didn't even think about it. So, yeah, we need to do that because that relates very much to this subject. In that episode, we talked about Christians and how they relate to Netflix and, how should we engage and not engage? And whenever you deal with this whole subject of culture, it just raises so many questions and everyone has an opinion and everyone has a view. And I don't know if we'll ever come to an agreement, but it's something I think that we should constantly be talking about. And let me kind of explain. I'm going to change up the way I want to do this. If you have a Bible, open up to 1 Peter. Open up to 1 Peter. I don't even know. Yeah, I may change the way we do this particular part. This is part 3, I think, in our discussion. And if you count the Netflix discussion, this would be part 4. I made that one separate. But this all fits together and just trying to pursue that you're a Christian, I'm a Christian, right? We're professing Christians. We all know we live in the world. And we all know that we're not supposed to be of it. And exactly what that looks like, how, what can we do? What shouldn't we do? This is a struggle. And let me just show you how this kind of plays out in Scripture and how this can be very difficult into knowing exactly what we should be doing or not doing. 1 Peter chapter 1. 1 Peter chapter 1, all right? Look at verse 14. 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 14. As obedient children, not fashioning yourselves according to the former lust in your ignorance. All right, this is describing the Christian life. We're to strive to be obedient children, to follow the Scriptures, to follow what God has told us. And what we're not to do is we're not to fashion ourselves or not fashioning yourselves according to the former lust in your ignorance. You're not to fashion yourself. You're not to live in accordance with the former lust. The things that you did in your past, the things you did prior to your salvation, the pre-salvation you're not to fashion yourself now as a Christian like that. There is to be a difference. There is to be a change, but he doesn't stop there. Verse 15, but as he, speaking of God, which hath called you is holy, so be ye holy in all manner of conversation. Now there, the term there, manner of conversation, is speaking in all manner of life. So in all aspects of your life, you are to strive for holiness. Okay, what does that look like? What does that mean? Now, everyone's going to read that a million times, like everyone's going to interpret that, or not really interpret it. Everyone's going to interpret that, yeah, we're called to be holy, but everyone's going to apply that in a million different ways. Some are going to say, well, that means you can't listen to any secular music. Boom, end of story. But they may say you can watch movies. You're like, well, the movies are secular. The movies, are the movies holy? Some will say, well, no, it doesn't have anything to do with that. It's referring to holiness in how you act and holiness in how you think. It's not, you can watch a form of entertainment and you will not engage in that same behavior. And you're not saying that behavior is right. You're watching a story. Some will say, no, if the story is not holy, then you're not holy. This leads to all kinds of discussions. He goes on to really drive the point home. Verse 16, because it is written, be ye holy, for I am holy. Now that comes from the book of Leviticus. So we are to be holy. What does holiness look like? You get these two terms. You're probably very familiar with them if you've been a Christian for any length of time, holiness and worldliness. Worldliness is to be avoided. Now, what is worldliness? What does make one worldly? Now, in my Christian experience, I've been told worldliness is listening to secular music. I've been told worldliness is listening to contemporary Christian music because contemporary Christian music is borrowing from the music of the world. Therefore, by definition, it is worldly. I've been told that certain kinds of dress is worldly, right? If you dress a certain way, if you dress with the styles of the world, well, I think we're all going to have, how do we go back and wear robes? What do you mean? That's worldly? Some will say watching sports is worldly. Others will say absolutely not. Sports are not worldly. Then what? Can anyone make it a going to the beach? Some will say, well, worldly. Others will say it's not worldly. Like what do you do? Some say, buying guns and going hunting, not worldly. Others say that's a worldly pursuit. Like you name the subject, you name the thing. And people are going to say, reading, if you read non-Christian books like novels that are filled with all kinds of things in it that are wrong, right? Killing, murder, adultery, cheating, lying, stealing, maybe even foul language, worldly. Others will say, no, it's not worldly. Now, again, you've got these things. You've got to love not the world. Right? Love not the world. We've talked about those passages in 1 John. Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world, because all that is in the world is lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. All right, well, okay, so how do I not become worldly, love the world, live like the world, and then how do I pursue holiness, that to be holy and not to fashion myself after the former lust? What does that look like on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday? What does it look like? These are conversations I think many in the modern church have given up on. But wait, Peter's not done. Jump over to 1 Peter chapter 2. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9. But ye, speaking of us as Christians, we are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, and holy nation, a peculiar people, that you should show forth the praise of him who hath called you out of darkness into marvelous light. So clearly this is saying we are different. We are a peculiar people. What does it mean to be a peculiar people? What does that look like? Verse 10, which in time past were not a people, but are now the people of God, which had not obtained mercy, but now have obtained mercy. Dearly beloved, look at verse 11, 1 Peter 2:11. I beseech you as strangers and pilgrims. All right, you are to live your life as a stranger, as a pilgrim. Well, what does it look like to be a stranger? To be like you don't belong here. You're to live like you don't belong here. You're a pilgrim. You're passing through. This is not your home. So what are we to do? We're to live like this. Listen, abstain from fleshly lust, which war against the soul. Abstain from fleshly lust. Okay, that one we can pin that one down a little bit more, right? We can pin that down. What the flesh, we are to abstain from fleshly lust. We would say we are to abstain, to avoid anything our flesh is lusting for that is clearly a sin. But wait a minute, we're not to love the world. So what if we're our flesh is lusting after the things of the world? Well, what are the things of the world? You see how these can just take you in a never-ending circle. Verse 12, having your conversation honest among the Gentiles. All right, so now this, we're to speak honestly. That makes sense. That wherein they speak against you as evildoers, they may be your good works, which they should behold, glorify God in the day of visitation. So we are to live differently, speak honestly, have good works. Now look at verse 13. Submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, whether it be to the king as supreme or unto governors, as unto them that are sent by him for the punishment of evildoers, for the praise of them that do well. All right, so another thing we're supposed to do is submit ourselves to our earthly leadership, to earthly rulers, to politicians. All right, that's to make us look different than the world. The world doesn't show submission to authority. They rebel against authority. Christians should be the one that are humbly submit ourselves even to an ungodly authority. Of course, only if it's a situation where we have to submit ourselves into every ordinance other than when they are clearly forcing us to disobey Scripture or prohibiting us from obeying it, okay? But even that can become iffy. But please note, all of this is talking about our engagement with the world. Clearly, all of these verses are screaming that we live here, that we live in it. But we're to act like a stranger and a pilgrim. We're to be a peculiar people. There's something about us that should be radically different. So this puts us at a difficult situation. And how do I engage it? How do I participate? How much can I participate? Some go for, a complete isolation. You don't know what's going on in the world. You don't pay attention to what's happening in the world. You don't know. You don't know what movies people are watching, what TV shows are people. You don't know. You stay away from all of it. And others are like, no, I can be involved in it. And what's the right? What's the wrong way? I think the one thing we have to know, and again, I've learned this over many years, is that let's state this: if you have two Christians who can't agree on what we should do or shouldn't do, the most important thing is that each Christian tries to look at the other Christian as that both Christians should look at each other as two individuals who are actively striving and trying to figure it out. Now, I know sometimes it can feel like, look, they're not even trying to figure it out. They're just enjoying all this worldly pleasure, and they're ungodly. I know it's easy to mark those that way. And there's probably plenty Christians who don't really care, and they are just engaging in the world. But I think what we need to do is at least try to give people at first the benefit of the doubt. They're a Christian, I'm a Christian, and we're trying to figure it out. We just don't agree on how to do it. But let's at least try to give everyone the benefit of the doubt that we're trying to figure it out, that we're striving for it. Now, I think there comes times you just give up and you just kind of say, these are the things I think are wrong. Again, I've seen this a million times within Christian homes. Rated R movies are wrong, period. End of story. PG-13, okay. Well, wait. So you just draw the distinction. You're worldly if you watch a rated R movie, but you're godly if you watch a PG-13 movie? Really? That's your, how about go back and watch Airplane from the 1970s, which is, I think, still rated PG, and you get full frontal nudity. Yeah, okay. Or at least the upper half nudity, not full, just the chest area of a female, all right? Yes, that's and if you go through that movie Airplane from the 70s, which I saw as a kid, that has so much sexual innuendo, so many things wrong in it that it's not even funny. But it wasn't rated R. So like some people that they draw that distinction. But again, they're trying their best. They're trying their best to figure it out, because sometimes they're like, there's too many things I've got to have some line in the sand. And I understand that, but again, I just want you to see that we have to perceive it, that we're in this together. Like sometimes Christians fight each other on this. We shouldn't be fighting each other on this, because we're in this together. We're both supposedly trying to fulfill what Peter and John and the rest of the New Testament, being holy, living a godly life, not being worldly. We're all trying to figure that out. So we're on the same side. So we should try to help each other here. We should try, but sometimes what really happens is this struggle with culture literally divides churches. And what you'll do, you'll have the church. This is the pro homeschool, no TV church, versus that's the public school, go to movies church. And it's like, come on. Do we really divide our churches now over this? But some Christians don't want to be in a church with other Christians who think public school is okay and going to the movies are okay, and they own a TV, and those families are talking about TV shows and movies, and the kids listen to secular music. They want to get their family from that because they believe that's going to corrupt their kids. So they'll form a church where their big issue isn't doctrine. Their big issue is no TVs and homeschooling. That's how they identify themselves. And it's like, come on. We can't be that way. Okay. Now again, the family who just says, hey, we're going to do all of this stuff, they need to be challenged by those other families, because this is what happens. The family who maybe is public school, go to movies, listen to secular music, they may view those other families as, I think they're crazy and whacked out of their heads. And I think we have to go, wait a minute. Like the one side looks at the other side and said, they're worldly. The other side looks at the other side and said, they're whacked out of their head and crazy. And I think we got to go, stop, everyone, stop. We shouldn't be divided in a pursuit for holiness and godliness and trying to avoid being worldly. That is something that we need to be together. And I think sometimes we need to be in the same church. We need to be in the same church because this is teaching us, look, your kids are going to have to learn to deal with other Christians who don't think their way. They're going to have to learn to deal with, and I know it's hard for kids. They're like, wait a minute. So they're a Christian, we're Christians, but they get to go there and I don't get to go there. All they're seeing it then is, and I know that this makes parents very uncomfortable, because then the kids are coming to you going, wait a minute, they've got all these questions, and you would rather just avoid those struggles. But you're going to have to prepare them to live amongst other Christians who have a different perspective, okay? And I think sometimes being together, I think it's a part of discipleship. Struggling with these issues. And as a parent, I know you don't want to struggle with it. You don't have to deal with your kid going, but come on, Mom, other Christians do it. You would rather just all the Christians around you think the same way, but that's not the way it works. So these are big issues that we have to work through. So we're looking at an article. The article is available at the theologycentral.net website. Just go to theologycentral.net and go to the blog. And I could go back through our definition of culture, but I'm not going to go through that again. All of that is available. But we're looking at an article. I'll just jump right to the article. We're looking at an article. It's published at the Fundamental Evangelistic Association website. There's a link, and you can read it at theologycentral.net. Go to the blog section, and you should see an article with this title, The Church Culture Conundrum. The Church Culture Conundrum. That it's a conundrum. It's a difficult situation. In fact, I was listening to one of my previous broadcasts, and I'm going to do this. A conundrum is defined as a confusing and difficult problem or question, all right? I kept explaining what a conundrum is, but I wasn't giving you the exact definition. It is a confusing and difficult problem or question. When it comes to the church and culture, we have a confusing and difficult question trying to answer. And that question, that confusion is, I've already articulated, how do we relate? What can we do? What shouldn't we do? How does this work? And I've experienced it my whole Christian life. I've seen everything under the sun, I believe. I've seen everything under the sun related to this problem. And it's crazy. But as soon as I think I've seen everything under the sun, someone will contact me going, my church says you can't do this. And I'm like, what? They're like, that's worldly and that's ungodly. I'm like, what? I don't get it. I don't understand. So there's always some new twist out there, but this is a problem. So in this article, what they're trying to do is work through a number of views. Here are the views they've given us so far. View number 1, Christians should have nothing to do with culture. Christians should have nothing to do with culture. Now, remember in that view, they didn't really talk about this view. They basically said this view is wrong. And they said this view is wrong because the Bible says that we are in the culture, but not to be of the culture. Now, to be very fair here, I didn't think they did a very good job, and here's the reason why. They just took that verse and they took that concept from the Gospel of John, and they basically focused on, we're in it. We're in it. So this view, and let me read the view again. This view that Christians should have nothing to do with culture, they say that's taken care of because we're supposed to be in it. But remember, that same verse that says or that same concept in the Gospel of John that seems to indicate that we're in the culture, it's the same, in that same passage, we're told we're not to be of it. We're in the world, but we're not of it. View number 1 is focusing on we're not of it. We're not of it. Yes, we're in it, but we're not of it. And some just say, wait, their view is wrong because we're in it. Well, we still got to deal with the not of it part. That's the thing that is the issue. What does it mean not to be of it? So view number 1, they're focusing on the not of it part, and they're saying, hey, we're not to have anything to do with culture. We're just to remove ourselves from it. We don't participate in it. We may be in it because we live here and we go to the stores to buy and to shop, and we go here and we work and we earn money and we go to the bank and we go to restaurants, but we are not of it. We don't participate in their entertainment. We don't participate in their ideology. And they emphasize that. And you've got to give them credit, because there's lots of scriptures about love, not the world, friendship with the world, enmity with God, seek those things that are above, love God supremely, meditate on God's word day and night. And you read all of that and you're kind of like, well, I don't know if I can participate in any part of culture. So they didn't really explain, they didn't really help us understand exactly, is there a balance here? They just said that view is wrong. And I will argue that view is attempting to not be of the culture, and we have to at least hear that view out. We have to at least hear them. We have to at least say, okay, I hear what you're saying. I don't know if I agree, but you are offering some strong challenges to my perspective. So I don't think we just dismiss view number 1 outright. I think they're literally attempting. I think view 1 exists because they're trying not to be of the world. All right, view number 2. Christians should use the culture in effort to evangelize. All right, Christians should use culture. Now, I'm completely opposed to view number 2 because I think it turns the church into a joke. This is where Christians run around and, hey, we're going to borrow the world's music. We're going to copy whatever the world's doing. We're going to bring it into the church so that we can evangelize. I think what this actually is, if you've got a lot of people within Christianity who love the things in the world and they want those things in the world to be spiritualized so that they can participate in them. I think this is more about creating industry where we copy the world's music and we have our own music industry. We copy everything in the world and we Christianize it so we can sell it, we can package it, we can produce it, and then our churches look like mini entertainment centers having a mini concert where we claim we're evangelizing people. I think all we're doing is we're appealing to Christians who love the things of the world, and we're trying to make it as fleshly as possible to appeal to people. And I don't even think that actually answers the question on how we can engage culture. I think that just calls into question, how should we use culture? And I'm not a big fan of trying to use the culture. I think the church is called to preach the word of God. That's what we're called to do. We're to proclaim the message, preach the truth, teach the scriptures in season and out of season, preach them, rebuke, exhort. You know all the scriptures. So we talked about that one in some detail. I'm not going to go back through it, but yeah. All right, so let's move to view number 3. I feel like we should spend some more time on that, but that's okay. View number 3. Here we go. Christians should try to renew and restore culture. Christians should try to renew and restore culture. All right, now this one is interesting. I don't know where you fall in light with this, but this is where Christians look at the culture and like, look how messed up it is. Look, it's so messed up. We're going to go in and restore it. We're going to renew it. We're going to transform culture. All right, let's see how they describe this and see if we agree or disagree. This third view is prominent among evangelical Christians today and is becoming increasingly popular as leading evangelical figureheads are advancing programs designed to implement kingdom-building goals. And they have that in quote, kingdom-building goals. Now, if you listen to a lot of preaching in the evangelical church, I have definitely heard this language, kingdom-building goals. How to build the kingdom, how to renew culture, how to restore culture. According to this view, one of the church's primary tasks is to transform and ultimately control the culture, often through political means or social action. Political means or social action. So here is like, hey, the culture is messed up. We need to fix the culture. So what do we need? We need politicians who will bring about a quote unquote spiritual Christianized version of culture. And we'll do so through political force or social action. Social action calls for boycotting. Disney. Well, Disney is not demonstrating our biblical values. Boycott them. Wait, Target, we don't like. Boycott them. Wait, we don't like this. Netflix. Hey, we don't like it. We're going to boycott Netflix because they have ungodly shows. And so what we want is we want a Netflix that demonstrates biblical morality, biblical culture. So we're going to restore and renew culture typically through politics or social action, which in many cases I believe is nothing more than censorship and force. Okay, so I'm against that. I get so tired of Christians thinking that everyone needs to act like us, that Christians need to think like us. Look, getting lost people to try to mimic biblical morality is of no value. They need salvation. They don't need to be told, no, make movies that we like. Well, it doesn't work that way. All right. So I have problems with this view to culture big time. All right. So again, according to this view, one of the church's primary tasks is to transform and ultimately control the culture, often through political means and social action. Because God is Lord of everything, Christians should seek to manifest God's lordship in everything, including politics, art, entertainment, education, or any other visible representation of society. In other words, Christians should use any lawful means possible to sanctify the political system and advance God's kingdom in this world. Now, I'm going to argue this is an attempt to restore and renew culture, listen, not through the power of the gospel, but through the power of earthly means. And I believe that's why it is defective. We do not renew and restore culture through earthly means. We're using fleshly, earthly means to do so. We're going to use the political system. We're going to use the boycott system. We're going to use the censor system. We're going to use all of this force to try to make everyone conform to quote unquote kingdom goals, kingdom principles, biblical morality. And that's never the way it was done. Jesus did not tell the disciples, go forth and change the culture through laws and through boycotts. He wasn't getting the disciples together. Okay, we need to go boycott this. And the church at Corinth, Paul wasn't telling the church, go boycott the false temple. Go boycott this. Go stand out and protest this. There was never a call for a boycott. There's never a call for a protest. There's never even a call for political action in the New Testament. What we're called to do is to submit to political authority. We're never called to do that. Not one place in the Scripture. Not one place. No, we're told to go and preach. We're told to go and live out our Christian life. We're told to be holy. We're told to be salt, to be light. But we're not told to go and try to transform culture through anything other than preaching the truth. And then when someone believes the truth and is converted, then they should experience a change that comes through salvation. And then they live out that change. And then they present the gospel. And the gospel is what's supposed to transform people. External fleshly means to supposedly renew or restore culture doesn't get people to salvation. It may give them an external form of morality that make them feel good about themselves, and you end up with a bunch of Pharisees and Sadducees. That's what you see, but you don't end up with salvation. This is utilizing fleshly means to try to produce some kind of spiritual result, and you don't get spiritual result through fleshly means. You get spiritual results through spiritual means, the proclamation of God's word. Salvation. Regeneration. There, you want restoration. It comes through regeneration and conversion. Salvation, justification. We can go through all sanctification. It's all spiritual. I don't get though. And if you listen to American Family Radio, they send out the American Family Association alerts, and you'll get an email alert saying, hey, this business is doing this, or this company is doing this. We need to do something now. So you send a letter to that business saying, we're not going to support you anymore until you start, caring about biblical truth. And, oh, come on. The world's got to look at that and like, are you out of your mind? You're going to tell us what to do by threatening us economically? I don't get it. Can you imagine I still believe atheists and agnostics and the whole world should just get together sometimes and say, we're going to boycott, everything, we're going to call for every Christian thing to be shut down, and we're going to boycott that. We're going to boycott all Christian businesses. We're going to some people try to do that with Chick-fil-A, and look how Christians responded. They got mad. The world got upset that Chick-fil-A sponsored or gave their money to certain pro-family organizations, and the world got mad and was telling people not to eat at Chick-fil-A, and Christians got all upset about it. Why? We do the same thing to the world. We do the same thing to the world. I think both sides should stop it. Who cares? Like that. I don't care about their political views or their political ideologies, or I don't care what they're doing with their money. What I'm dealing with in a business, I want a product for a good price, and I like the product, and the product provides what I need. But no, we turn into, oh, look, they support this. Boycott them, ban them, silence them. I think that gets us into a cultural war. Christians are to be beyond a cultural war. We're in a war with the culture in the sense that we're trying to live differently, but we're not trying to force the culture to live according to what we want them to do. We want to present the gospel to them. Whenever I say this, Christians get so mad at me, but I don't get this viewpoint. Let me read this again. Because God is Lord of everything, Christians should seek to manifest God's lordship in everything, including politics, art, entertainment, education, or any other visible representation of society. In other words, Christians should use any lawful means possible to sanctify the political system and advance God's kingdom in the world. This is the whole thing about Christians wanting, the Bible in the public school. I want the Bible taught in the public school. Okay, what do you exactly want taught in the public school? You want the Bible taught? Do you want the Quran taught? No. I don't. What, do you want the book, the Satanic Bible taught? Absolutely not. Well, but you want the Bible taught. So what you want is the public school and in a way, be a de facto church? You want them to teach the Bible? Do you want publicly led prayer? So do you want the public school to be a Christian school? Is that what you want? Or maybe the church could teach the Bible. Oh, yeah, that's a radical idea. The church could teach the Bible, right? So you want the public school to do part of the church? Like, I still to this day don't get that. We want the public school to somehow be a Christian organization. It's a public school. Not all students are Christians, right? Right? You're going to have Muslim students. You're going to have Jehovah's Witnesses students. You're going to have Catholic students. You're going to have agnostic and atheistic students. It's a public educational institution, right? So what you want, but you want the Christian ideas to be there. You want the Christian ideals. You want them to teach creation. You want them to teach the Bible. Like, I don't get how Christians can't see that. Like, why are you trying to force that on people? That's not the way it was ever. And again, you never see Jesus, organizing a group to go in. Let's change the Roman schools. Let's change these schools, right? Let's protest. No, it's never done that way. Now, of course, I understand public school system came along much longer. Okay, you get the idea. Okay, in other words, I'm just saying you don't see this mindset in the Bible. I know that was probably a bad illustration. Public school system came later, but I just want to, and I know what a lot of people do will go back to the early part of the founding of our country, going, but the schools were very much more religious at that time. Oh, maybe they were. Maybe they were. When you had the majority of people in America maybe professing to be Christians. But the bottom line is it's still a public institution, and it's still not the place to force Scripture. It's not the place. The church is the one supposed to be doing that. It's not the government's job. And then who teaches the Bible? How do you teach it? What approach do you teach? They teach the Bible, but they call into question all the stories. Then you get mad. What do you want them to actually say about the Bible? You want a lost person teaching the Bible to kids in a public school. That makes sense. Or, oh, no, you want a pastor to come in and teach it, right? Just whole thing becomes crazy. Here is some more about this. Historically, this view is often tied to belief in what has been called the cultural mandate or the cultural commission. The late Dr. Charles Colson was a prominent evangelical who embraced and promoted the cultural mandate. Rick Warren of Saddleback fame is also advancing the cultural commission program through his latest self-described revolutionary peace plan, whereby he hopes to change the world through mobilizing churches to adopt villages in third world countries for the purpose of eradicating poverty, illiteracy, disease, spiritual emptiness, selfish leadership, etc. According to Colson, if churches focus exclusively on the disciplines of prayer, Bible study, worship, fellowship, and witnessing, okay, and if in the process we ignore our responsibility to redeem the surrounding culture, our Christianity will remain privatized and marginalized. There you have it. See, the church should not just focus on what things, prayer, Bible study, worship, fellowship, and witnessing. We cannot ignore our responsibility to redeem the surrounding culture. We're to redeem it. Well, how do you redeem a lost culture? By presenting the gospel to them, right? I don't know exactly what they hope to accomplish there. Turning our backs on the culture is a betrayal of our biblical mandate, all right? He continues, evangelicalism and cultural renewal are both divinely ordained duties. Our goal is to equip believers to present Christianity as a total worldview life system and to seize the opportunity of the new millennium to be nothing less than God's agents and building, listen to this, a new Christian culture. Let's build a new Christian culture. Okay, let's build a new Christian culture. Hey, all of you who are lost, we're sorry. You're going to live in a Christian culture. You may not be a Christian, you may not like it, but you're going to live in a Christian culture because we're going to have our way. That's what it comes across as. Now, I know that people in it say, no, that's not what we're saying. Well, in a way it is. I don't want a Christian culture. I want a Christian culture if everyone is converted to Christ, and then a Christian culture happens organically, right? It's an organic thing. If the majority of people become Christians, they will pursue holiness and godliness and righteousness, and they will pursue these things. But that comes through preaching and witnessing. Here's what I think happened. This is what I think happened. Witnessing and preaching the gospel is a very difficult situation, and here's the reason why. Now, this is going to get into a very theological debate, I know, but just hear me out. I'm going to approach this from two perspectives, but hear me out. At some point, the church caught on. Wait a minute. Going out there and witnessing to people, because remember there was a time there was all these witnessing ideas, witnessing programs, how to witness, the evangelism explosion. I don't remember all the different ones, all these different programs teaching people how to go out and witness, go door to door, go stand on a street corner, witness to people, preach the gospel, because that will change the world. All right. But at some point we caught on to something. This is my theory of how it happened. Listen to me. When you preach the gospel, and I'm going to give you two views of salvation. If you have the Calvinistic approach, right? The Reformed approach. I don't even like the word Calvinistic, but the Reformed approach. Well, you're going to believe that salvation is a sovereign work of God. So I can go preach the gospel all day, but unless God moves from a general call, because if I preach, that's the general call, God has to engage in the effectual call through the Holy Spirit into the preaching of the word to draw and bring that dead sinner to life. He has to regenerate them. And once he regenerates them, then he grants them faith and he grants them repentance, and then they believe. So in other words, I can preach to 1 million people, but the only people who are going to get saved are the ones God has elected and who he effectually calls. Then he will justify them and ultimately he will glorify them. All right. That is the Reformed view. So guess what? It's out of my hands. In other words, I'm not going to go in with little crazy techniques, trying to manipulate them into saying a prayer, trying to pull on their heartstrings. I'm just going to present the gospel, present the facts, and I'm going to leave it in God's hands, and that's the end. Well, guess what? It's out of my control. So I'm not going to get the number of people saved that I possibly want to get saved, because if I could get those people saved, then we could see a change in culture. And guess what? This is a slow process, and you may see very few people getting saved, and you may go, man, culture is getting worse and worse and worse. This is not working. All right. Another way is we're going to move over to the non-reform perspective. We're going to move over to this idea of the free will view, right? That anyone can choose to believe. So my job is to go in and do everything I can to get them to believe. Now, within this world, you have, it's up to their free will. I'm just going to preach to them and then they will decide. But if you go with that view, listen, guess what happens? It's still their free will. You cannot make it happen. So guess what? You're still left with the idea that they may not want to believe. And so what do? You can't force them. So guess what? While you're sitting out there trying to preach and all these people are quote unquote exercising their free will to refuse your message, the culture continues to get worse, and that bothers the church. There's another approach within the free will world, and that is come up with every cheesy manipulative technique and trick to get someone to supposedly say a sinner's prayer and then claim that they're saved and then claim you had 3,000 people saved. The only problem is they run around claiming 5,000 people got saved, 10,000 people got saved, 27,000 people got saved. And then the culture just continues to get worse and they can't figure out why. Well, because all you got them to do was say a prayer and no actual conversion took place. Conversion doesn't take place because you get someone to say a prayer. Conversion takes place because they have been regenerated and have been born again, which is a work of God. All right. So all of those techniques going even all the way back to Finney, where you had these, we had 1 million people saved, and then culture 2 years later is no different. Well, if 1 million people got saved, culture should be radically different 12 months later, because those 1 million people who got saved are going to start pursuing God. They're going to start being discipled. They're going to start going to church. They're going to read their Bible. They're going to do some basic Christian things, right? I mean, if you're a Christian, you're going to do basic Christian things, and you should see a transformation, but it doesn't happen. So guess what? If you're on the reform side, hey, God's got to save them. Nothing I can do. Guess what? That's a slow process of just preaching and waiting for God to save those whom he's going to save. If you're in the free will side, I'm going to preach, and well, they didn't seem interested, and I can't force them. It's their free will. All right. Or you go with the manipulative side and you manipulate all these numbers, but guess what? You ultimately end in all three views, all three attempts. Guess what? You don't get a radical transformation of society. And so then the church decided, wait a minute. This is not working. Society is getting worse and worse and worse, and it bothers Christians, and I understand why it bothers Christians. Look at how bad culture is. It's void of spirituality. It's immoral. It's ungodly. It promotes every kind of crazy idea. This world is sick. We need to do something. So then what they decided to do, we are going to redeem it and restore it, not through the preaching of the gospel, because that's too slow, but we're going to utilize every other method. We're going to use social change. We're going to do everything. We're going to try to make this a Christian culture using politics and using everything else that we can. Well, guess what? There's people out there who don't want it. So do you believe in libertarian free will or do you not? If you believe in libertarian free will, why are you going to try to go against their will? Other people don't want it. And guess what this has sparked? This has sparked the cultural war. Because those who are not Christian feel like the church is at war with us. They're trying to force us into this. And so then they fight back. And then you end up with these major cultural wars. The church should have never engaged in that war. We're involved in a spiritual war. We're fighting principalities and powers of the air. We're fighting a spiritual. We're to put on spiritual armor. We're not fighting against flesh and blood. And our weapons are not carnal, but are spiritual and powerful through God. We're supposed to be engaging in a spiritual conflict. I'm not out there trying to force the world to live like me, think like me, and ban anything that they want to do because I don't like it. And I'm going to shut it down, and I'm going to close it, and I'm going to stop it by force. That's not the way the culture is to be transformed biblically. I am all for the transformation of the culture. I'm all for the renewal of the culture, but the culture is made up of people. So guess what? People need to be renewed. People need to be redeemed. And that is through the proclamation of the gospel. I cannot redeem. No one can become redeemed or renewed through fleshly means. All of the quote unquote mass evangelistic events, big evangelism events. Here, what is it called? The harvest, the field of harvest or something like that. I don't know what they call it. They go to Shotwell Stadium. They pack it in with all these people to supposedly give, say the sinner's prayer and then claim, 2,000 people got saved. And well, no matter how many years they do it, no matter how many thousands of people got saved, the city of Abilene remains the same with the same moral degradation that occurs every year. And because guess what? Getting people to say a prayer doesn't save them, right? There's got to be true conversion. There's got to be regeneration. They've got to come from a dead sinner to being made alive. They've got to be born again. That's a work of God. We can't make it happen. And I can manipulate people to say prayers all day. Finney learned that. After that supposed awakening, what they called it, the burned over area, where there was almost a deadness to everything spiritual because all these people had been convinced that they were saved, even though all they had done is say a prayer. They had no love for God, no desire for God, and it became a dead spiritual area that became darker than it was before you came in with all your fake evangelistic approaches. So this whole mindset here is just crazy. All right. So they want to build a new Christian culture. Colson believes Christians are to fulfill both the Great Commission and the Cultural Commission. No, there's only the Great Commission. There's not a Cultural Commission. And states in no uncertain terms that both commissions are inseparable. The Cultural Commission, he says, is the call to create a culture under the lordship of Christ. Now, please note, you're going to create a culture under the lordship of Christ. Well, not everyone, the world rejects the lordship of Christ. They don't accept it. They don't believe it. They don't even believe he exists. Can you imagine if you read a Muslim book saying we're going to create a cult? Now just think about this. If you read a book by a Muslim, right? I've got the Quran right here in front of me. I've got the Quran right here. If a Muslim looked at you and said, hey, we believe in establishing an Islamic culture under the lordship of Allah, and we're going to implement that, you would say that's Sharia law. That's force. That is wrong. Exactly. Okay. Exactly. Now, they may do it in a more forceful manner, but it's the same concept. They want an Islamic culture, and we want a Christian culture. I don't see how Christians can't see the problem with this view. We have a cultural commission. Let me read this again. Colson believes Christians are to fulfill both the Great Commission and the Cultural Commission, and states in no uncertain terms that both commissions are inseparable. The Cultural Commission, he says, is the call to create a culture under the lordship of Christ, adding, God cares not only about redeeming souls, but by restoring his creation. Our job is not only to build up the church, but also to build a society to the glory of God. According to Colson, the biblical justification for the cultural mandate is found in Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 through 28, where God told Adam to have dominion over the earth and subdue it. The same command is still binding on us today. Though the fall introduced sin and evil into human history, it did not erase the cultural mandate. Now, how exactly is the Cultural Commission achieved? According to Colson, it is achieved not only by believers consistently permeating every aspect of society for the purpose of establishing a Christian culture, but also by showing unbelievers that the Christian worldview is the one that truly answers their questions. In other words, believers are to be cultivating ethical knowledge even among unconverted. So then a Christian culture can supposedly exist among a society full of unbelievers, despite what the scriptures declare to be true. Now, man, that one is a mess. We're at 51 minutes, so I'm going to have to stop there. This one scares me. This one frightens me because, again, if you just change the language and you have some Muslim on television go, we are going to establish a Islamic America, an Islamic culture. We would now they may do it in a more forceful way, but this is the same idea. Hey, we were going to do whatever we can politically to redeem this culture and to establish a Christian culture. No. And we're going to try to convince lost people that the Christian worldview is the one they need. Well, even if lost people were to adopt a Christian worldview, even if they were to do so, A, they're lost. They still need salvation. And B, guess what's inside of all of us? An unregenerate heart. And if it's a lost person, then why would they even be motivated to pursue it? You've got to try to convince them there's some fleshly good in doing it. There's some fleshly benefit. And maybe there is some fleshly benefit, but ultimately they have no internal motivation to deny the flesh. This whole thing is just a train wreck of ideas. The Bible nowhere calls for this. Nowhere calls for this. And yes, he was to subdue and have dominion. Yes, Adam was in the garden. And then once the fall happens, were they still supposed to go around and have dominion over all parts of culture? Was that dominion over the created culture that's being spoken of in Genesis? In other words, the animals, the trees that we're to utilize and have dominion and care and utilize it for our, to glorify God and for us to sustain ourselves? Or is this talking about having dominion over every aspect of culture? Art, politics, entertainment, music? Oh, for crying out loud, I don't want Christians in charge of music culture. Oh my goodness, I do not. That would be horrific. The quality of music would drop by 9,000%. Yeah, and I've studied contemporary Christian music, and yes, I know that there's been some that's good, but they've very little innovation, rarely change anything, copy everything, and many, and I know I offend people, but second-rate hacks putting together subpar music that Christians think is so wonderful. No, I don't want them in charge of music culture. I do not. Okay, but that's a whole different subject. All right, so I'm going to have to stop there. We'll really come back to this one and pull this one apart. Man. Yeah, they're going to give 8 serious problems with this view. They're going to give 8. So obviously they're in agreement with me here. So that's interesting. They're going to give 8 problems. Now you can again read this article for yourself at theologycentral.net, theologycentral.net. I'm not a fan of this view. Man, no. Now, this still doesn't answer. I know this still doesn't really get us to the heart of the matter, which is, hey, well, it does, because some Christians are like, hey, we're to be out there changing culture. And, but even that, I don't know how it would be interesting to know how they perceive engaging culture. They probably are very much engaged in it. But like, do you watch the movies, or do you call for Christians to make movies and then we boycott those movies? Like I bet you there's a lot of variations even within that view, but I'll have to stop right there. Yeah. I really want to get into that one. This one hits right at home at the church, because there are many churches who clearly this is their mentality with culture. Redeem it, restore it. A cultural mandate, a cultural commission. Man, now I'm all for presenting the biblical worldview to the world. I'm not afraid of doing that. But again, I don't believe a lost person is going to adapt the biblical worldview unless they're converted. What's even the point, right? The fleshly mind is at enmity with God. It won't submit to God. The spiritual worldview is at odds with the world. Like it looks nonsensical to the world. They're guided by a fleshly mindset. So I don't even know like what you hope to accomplish there. Hey, here's all these lost people, but hey, they want a Christian culture. Yeah, I'm sure they do. No, they typically get mad and ticked off, and I wish Christians would stop telling them what they have to do. They get mad when they're like, you're gonna try to boycott this. You're gonna I remember this. I'll end with this. Here's a good cultural example. I need to bring the album in. Kilroy Was Here by Styx. Make sure that's I know, I'm pretty sure that's the name of the album. Give me 1 second. I'll look it up. I want to make sure I'm 100% right. It was a major album in my childhood or my teenage years. Kilroy Was Here. I'm absolutely positive. Yes, here it is. Kilroy Was Here. Released in 1983. Okay. The band Styx. I'm looking at the cover. 9 tracks. Mr. Roboto. You all remember that. Cold War. Don't Let It In. High Time. Heavy Metal Poisoning. Just Get Through the Night. Double Life. Haven't We Been Here Before? And Don't Let It End. Okay. And that's another, the ending. It's the first track, Don't Let It In, which is track 3, is about 5 minutes long, and Don't Let It In at the end is like 2 minutes. It's just like to end the story. If you don't know, Kilroy Was Here was a concept album. It was a concept album, and it had a profound impact on my life. Because I wasn't a Christian, and there was something happening in this part of Texas. I've told this story before. In this part of Texas, there was like the churches were like losing their minds in 1983, 84. There was all this, even non-Christian radio stations were talking about backmasking, and they were playing, Another One Bites the Dust backwards, Stairway to Heaven by Zeppelin backwards. There was all these supposedly hidden messages. Another One Bites the Dust by Queen. I think it was something about smoke marijuana. Stairway to Heaven. It was something about Sweet Satan or something. I can't remember all the supposed backward messages they found. And so that was like, and then there was all these conferences being held in churches around this area about the evils of rock and roll. And what they would do is they'd hold a conference, and they would show, play clips of the songs and show artwork of albums, scaring parents to death that, this music is of Satan. This music is going to lead to demonic possession of your children. I remember hearing a story at one of them that somebody was listening to Hell's Bells by AC/DC, and demons came out of their speakers. I mean, it was insane. It was like this, it was almost like it almost felt like the Salem witch trials, and just people weren't being killed, but it was this hysteria that was spreading. And there was all this talk that Satanists were kidnapping children and using them for sacrifices. I mean, it was crazy. They even made a curfew one Halloween that you could not be out, because that we were literally, the city was afraid that people were going to be kidnapped by Satanists and used as human sacrifices. It was nuts. This was during Mike Warnke and the the Satan Seller, his book supposedly, that he was a satanic high priest. Come to find out it was all fraudulent. It was a crazy time to be alive. And I was in the middle of all of this going, wait, what is going on? And I didn't really understand everything because I was young, but I knew this. I went to all these rock conferences at all these churches, even though I wasn't a believer. And I would sit there and just like literally laugh my head off at how badly they were misrepresenting songs and misrepresenting everything. And then after these conferences, they would get together, and then all the, I don't know, sometimes the teenagers were being told to by their parents. All of their albums were put in a big pile and burnt. They were burning albums like it was Nazi Germany. And I'm lost looking at all of this going, this is insane. They are coming after my music. They are attacking me. And Kilroy was here in that album. If you listen to it, you hear this kind of cultural fight going on. Like, hey, I got to stand against these people. They're coming after me. They want to control my thoughts. They want to control my mind. They're coming after me. They want to stop my music, but you're never going to stop rock and roll. You're never going to stop it. Rock and roll is going to live forever. And I got caught up in the story of the album, and I felt literally like it was my story. Like I'm Kilroy. You're not going to stop me. I'm going to do whatever I can. I'm going to overcome you. I'm going to fight you. You're not going to silence my music. You're not going to tell me what I can listen to. You're not going to censor my music. You're not going to ban my music. I'm going to listen to it even more. You're not going to stop me. And I remember that there was a culture war, and this were Christians, in a sense, trying to establish a Christian culture, saying all this music needs to go. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. How dare you? Look, you do what you want in your church, but you leave my music alone. And so I wasn't getting the gospel. I was being threatened that my music needed to be banned. My music needed to be silenced. That we now needed remember the label, the parental advisory label that started being promoted in the 80s by the parent council, and we're going to put a label so that the parents will know that you shouldn't buy this album, or you can't be, unless you're of a certain age, you can't buy the album. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I'm going to be standing outside of a record store going, hey, dude, come here. How old are you? 21. Here's $20. Go buy my album. I mean, come on. Like, it's going to turn into that. Like, it was insane. So I just remember, and remember the movie Footloose caught that same vibe. Here's the church trying to stop the school dance. And it's like, that to me is what it felt like. Like, we're going to redeem culture. No, you're going to establish a culture in the Christian image, and all the non-Christians are going to be forced to comply. And that leads to the culture war. That leads to these political battles between left and right. And then you have the church sounding like they're Rush Limbaugh or Sean Hannity. No, that's not supposed to be our war. We're not supposed to be fighting that war. Left and right. And you'll even see Christians today on social media posting things like pro-Trump. That's not our war. Wash your hands of that. We're fighting a spiritual war. Present the gospel. See, that to me is becoming worldly. That to me is actually being of the culture. That's not only being in it, that's being of it, because you're engaging the world in a worldly fight, in a worldly battle, in a fleshly battle. That to me is far more being a part of the culture than it is for me to go listen to, the new Fiona Apple album, right? Her new album, Get the Bolt Cutters, Fiona Apple. Yeah, I believe so. Which is an amazing album musically. But I could sit there and talk to you about the lyrics. To me, it's not worldly to sit there and try to figure out what she's saying. I may disagree with her point of view. I may disagree, because just listening to it doesn't mean I agree with it. Doesn't mean that I support the perspective. I'm listening to the perspective. I'm enjoying the musical ability, but I may disagree with the lyrical message. That to me is less being a part of the culture than embracing some cultural mandate and finding all of I'm trying to do is establish a Christian culture by fighting in a fleshly, worldly manner through politics and cultural social action. That to me is being so much more of the world than me sitting at home with a pair of headphones listening to Kilroy Was Here or Fiona Apple or any other albums that came out in the last couple of weeks going, I wonder what they're saying here. That's an interesting, don't know if I agree. That's definitely not a Christian perspective, but I think I know what she's saying. That to me is, or watching a movie. All right, I watched a movie last night. I don't have time to talk about it, but I was going to use that as an illustration. As I watched it, There were things in the movie I clearly disagreed with, but there was a message there. Like the message wasn't, I'll just name the movie Backdraft, directed by Ron Howard, I think it was 1990s. Clearly not a Christian movie, got obscenity. You've got some things in it definitely wrong. But if you think about it, that movie's really not even about fire. The Backdraft is the lives of the two brothers and all the things that's happened. The oxygen kind of got sucked out of the room, and then this fire, and then it was waiting to explode. The fire kind of burned itself out and then kind of withdrew, waiting for another amount of oxygen to be entered in, and then it would explode. And this backdraft explodes. You can look up the definition of what a backdraft is. You'll get the idea. But in the movie, they used the fire, and this idea of a backdraft really is a symbol of what was happening between the two brothers, because their father died, basically burned up all the oxygen. Their relationship between the two brothers were destroyed. They finally get back together, and boom, there's an explosion. There's a backdraft. The one man, his marriage is falling apart. The oxygen is gone. And then ultimately all these circumstances come together to create a backdraft where there's an explosion, and you get all of the things that ultimately happen at the dramatic conclusion of the movie, which is ultimately sad. So I can sit there and analyze all that. I don't have to agree with the language. I don't have to walk out and participate in said language, and I don't have to agree with everything done in the movie. But I can analyze it and go, wait, I can look at this from a Christian perspective. To me, that's less worldly. Now, some will say that's worldly, and I understand, and I'm not here to debate you. I'm just saying that if that's worldly, then getting into all of this, pro-Trump and fight this, and we're Republicans and they're liberals and they're Democrats and they're leftists and I'm on the right. That is literally putting yourself not just in it, that's making yourself of it, and you're engaging in a war that actually doesn't help Christianity. It turns people against Christianity because they see you as a political movement, or they see you as a cultural movement bent on forcing them to submit to your view of culture. Just like I rebelled against the Christian mindset, trying to tell me about what music I could and could not listen to. Now, I ultimately became a Christian, which to me demonstrates the power of God to save someone, and in spite of the church's failure, right? Because I was saved in spite of the church. Everything the churches were doing were driving me away from Christianity. But I still ended up hearing the gospel. And so that's what ultimately happened. I ended up in a revival service where the gospel got preached. I realized I was a sinner. God died for me. And that's all I heard. All the other things the church was doing became irrelevant. I heard the gospel. And that's what changed me. That's what changed me. It wasn't their argument about rock and roll. It wasn't about them trying to create a Christian culture. That did not change me because there's no spiritual power in that. That's fleshly power and a fleshly weapon trying to fight a fleshly war in a fleshly way. All right, so we'll need to look at their 8 reasons why that view is wrong, but we'll stop right there. Love to get your thoughts on all of this. newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. Yeah, all right. A lot of things we could talk about there, but I'll stop. All right. There you have it. Please leave a review, leave a rating for this podcast. Apple or anywhere else, you can leave a review and rating. Share it with as many people as humanly possible. If you have YouTube, you can subscribe there. You'll get everything there if you want to listen to us on YouTube. So if you need finding anything, just email me. There you have it. All right. I just feel like there's a million other things I need to say, but I'm going to stop because I need some lunch, I think. I need some lunch. I think I did pretty good today. There's a lot of other things I want to accomplish, but I think we'll stop. All right, everyone have a great day. God bless.